right, folks, welcome back to the Madrano Exchange podcast. I have a special guest today. I am here with Samantha Steele, who is the Cook County Board of Review, property tax assessments, basically, almost.
Yeah, so I'm the commissioner, second district for the Cook County Property Tax Appeal Board. We call it the Board of Review here. Essentially, the assessor sets value to your property, and if you are not happy with that value, you appeal at the Board of Review.
Okay, and you were up for re-election.
I am up for re-election,
Currently.
and March 26th is the primary.
Okay. Now, I did read you were thinking of going to try to go for property tax assessor?
Yeah, so my background, I was elected county assessor in Indiana, Tippecanoe County, Indiana, in 2006. I took office in 2007. So I've been doing this for a while. I was the first Democrat elected countywide in that county in 30 years, and I was a 27-year-old single mom. So it was, a lot of trial by fire, and I was really forced to learn everything there was about assessments. And so I've been in the assessment world since 2006. I've have a company that does the valuation work for county assessors across the Midwest.
Okay.
I do a lot of training internationally. Our office, actually, the District 2, we just won 4 National Association of County Awards for the work that I've done and initiated in the last 2.5 years at the board. I had come on, I met the current assessor, Fritz Kagi, when he was assessor-elect. In September of 2018, I was teaching in Minneapolis at the International Association of Counties Officials annual conference. And so I introduced myself and I said, I do this for a living. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help. And I did come on and I worked with him for the first 9 months of his tenure. And I quickly realized that, while he had hired several really intelligent and fantastic individuals, he wasn't so keen on listening to their advice.
Okay.
And so I felt that, I was sort of wasting my time, and we parted ways. And then during the pandemic, I realized that, the assessments were still not improved.
Right.
And people were very upset with the COVID adjustment. And I thought that I could come on at the Board of Review and put my professional expertise to work for the property taxpayers in Cook County. So I ran in 2021, 22, for Board of Review District 2. And elections were held in June of 22, and I took office in December of 22. So we're 2.5 years in.
So what makes somebody like you or anybody to get into tax assessments? I mean, what is that is not like, did you go to college strictly for something like this? Or
I have an art degree.
So how do you go from art degree to all of a sudden doing tax assessments and then owning a company doing tax assessments and now Cook County and the mess that we have here in Cook County when it comes to tax assessments and appeals?
I think for most people, life is not linear, right? Like, we have so many different options. And in 2006, so I went to Purdue, and then I went to CAIAD, and I graduated, and then I was a flight attendant while I was in school. And so I sort of just stayed a flight attendant, and then 9/11 happened, and everyone that didn't have at least 5 years was furloughed. And so I became a realtor. And I was a co-owner in an Arts and Entertainment magazine. And one of my friends was like, no one our age is involved in politics. And you should really think about running for assessor because you're a realtor. And at this point in Indiana, there was a Supreme Court ruling that the way that they were doing property valuations was unconstitutional. And so I thought, I could actually maybe make a difference. At least the worst could be like, oh, remember that time I ran for office? And so I won, and I sort of just have built my professional career around property valuations. It's interesting because it is a bit of a science and an art because it's an opinion of value. There are standards that you follow or should be following, and then you have your own opinion in that.
Right.
And so
you grew up in Illinois, right?
I grew up in Bridgeport,
Bridgeport, okay.
36 Emeralds.
I grew up in Logan Square.
Nice.
I've lived here my entire life. So, and you may not like this, but I mean, growing up, Cook County was known as Crooked County just because of the corruption. I mean, you probably heard the same thing growing up. So it's kind of like one of those things, like, how do people decide especially when it comes to property values, like who is going to get taxed how much versus somebody else. And like you said, it's kind of like a balancing act, but it's like you guys basically have the right to determine this house is going to get charged, let's say $200 versus this house that's worth $1 million. Okay, we're going to do $50. I mean, I know it's not that easy, but in a way
it isn't. So it's the tax rate is set, and that's, it's depending on your assessed value. Is you're taxed on the same tax rate as I am taxed on if we lived in the same taxing district.
Okay.
So there are multiple different taxing districts across Cook County. The majority of your tax bill goes to the schools, so it depends on what school district you're in. I live in Evanston, and we had a referendum in 2017. So our tax rate is a little bit higher than Chicago, the city of Chicago proper, CPS. And then you have this tax rate, which is set, and you have a budget that you need to fill. And so the assessor sets the values, and they should be doing it based on standard approved practices. I can tell you right now, there is no assessment manual. There wasn't one when I took off it,
came in. Even feasible? I know we discussed it before we started.
Logic to me, I just can't imagine. So how you set property, the basic is the cost approach. And so it's like, how much would it cost to rebuild this house? And then you calculate that based on the current value of materials used for the property and the square footage of the property and all these other little details that make the property.
And that goes for residential plus commercial. It's not, yes, it's not different because it's commercial or...
It should not be. This is the basic foundation of assessing. It's the cost approach. And so you would do the cost of how much it would take to replicate right now the property that you're looking at.
Okay.
And there's formulas for this. And then you do depreciation. So say this property is 100 years old. What's that depreciation look like? And so you add that into the cost approach, and then you add the land at the end, what the land value would be. And so that's the cost minus depreciation approach. Then there is the sales comparison approach. And so it's a little bit easier when you have residential properties because they generally just sell for utility of living in them.
Right.
They come, sometimes you'll have an appliance or two, but the majority of it is just the real estate.
Right.
When you buy businesses, it's a little bit more complicated in that you have to extract out all of the other values that go with business, purchasing a business. Say it's a hotel. Generally, they sell with beds and TVs and,
right.
All of those accoutrements. And then the going concern of the actual business, right? And so you have to be able to understand that and take that out, and then you can value it also if it's a commercial property on the income approach, and so what that storage unit is renting for.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the three approaches to value. Currently, Cook County does the income approach specifically for commercial properties. That's the majority of how they value property. And then the residential is based on the sales comparison approach.
So because I do mortgages for a living, I know a lot of realtors, and a lot of realtors do business with a lot of commercial. And I guess right now, Kagi is now very, very popular within the commercial space.
Well, when you he ran on a campaign that the commercial property owners were getting this tax break, and maybe some of that is true, but for the majority of the properties in Cook County, we have roughly 169, maybe 170,000 parcels of commercial property. Compare that to the 1.6 million parcels we have total, right? So the majority of our properties are residential, but those, it's a little bit sexier to talk about, oh, this guy's getting a big break. The majority of those properties were, from 2016, 2017. Mm-hmm. Life has definitely changed post-pandemic for commercial properties. Specifically,
a lot of them are empty spaces, and it's, the downtown Michigan Avenue area is just,
it's not the same.
Everything down there, that whole district has just been decimated since.
And he's not.
COVID.
So when I was a county assessor, it was during the recession, the housing crisis that we had.
2008, 2009,
yeah. 10. And so at some point, when the majority of the properties selling were foreclosures, they become the market. And so those are the comparables that you should be using. And that would be the same situation that you should be looking at with commercial properties. A lot of the commercial properties had, older leases where people were just backing out of those leases because there's no way that they can afford, the $15 to $16 a square foot for rent.
Right.
And they're,
or
a lot
more.
of,
I mean,
or more,
$40,
right?
$50 a square foot, depending on where you were downtown.
Sometimes with a commercial lease, so you would know this, is that they have like the base rate, so the $14, $15,
Right.
and then the rate based on your
Triple
sales.
net. Well, yeah, everything. It depends on what kind of business it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just a lot of the businesses, they simply could not afford it. And especially our mom and pops. I mean, you said Michigan Avenue, but if you go down Clark Street in Andersonville, so many properties are turning over.
Yeah.
And I think a lot about Chicago is that our neighborhoods are so like the people create the fabric of, our neighborhoods, and having those people leave and, the Taco Bells and the eyeglass and dentist place come in, it's like it really changes the fabric of our community.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's important to have an elected official doing property taxes that actually knows and understands the process.
When we started talking before we even got on air, you were saying something about that none of the properties have been assessed since 1997. How is that even possible that nothing has been, like, we haven't had appraisers actually going out and...
I could speculate, but I personally hate when people assume something about me. So I'm just going to say that every other county in the state of Illinois is required to physically inspect. I'm not talking about going into your house. I'm talking about
outside drive-bys.
Yes, you can gather a lot from looking at a house. Like, does it look like they've maintained the property? Is the quality, condition, and the architecture structure? We don't have those basic foundations in Cook County. There hasn't been a coordinated full inspection since 1997, and even that, it's like, did they really do it?
So how can we say that what somebody's house is being assessed at is actually fair if they're not actually doing, based on what you're saying, like what other counties are doing?
Well, that's why we have the appeal process. So a lot of, a third of the county appeals their assessment every year. That's
a lot.
That's a lot, right?
You have how many people? 20 people on staff or something like that?
Well, total in my staff, there's 39.
Okay.
If you add me, there's 40. And so there are three of us. The Board of Review is comprised of 3 individually elected commissioners. And we are each elected in our district, but we hear appeals all over the county. And so my staff, we now have a manual. I brought a woman on, I've 20 years in the assessment world.
Right.
I've built relationships across jurisdictions. And this woman, her name is Chesney. She teaches classes for property valuations for the state of Illinois. She's very involved in education, and she's been in the assessing world for 27 years. Mm-hmm. And so it took me 2 years to bring her on. I was just begging and begging. Yeah. And it's difficult to leave an office that you've known forever and to take that leap. And because of my vision and her commitment and her, our relationship, she agreed to come on. And in the last so July was a year for her. She worked on drafting an assessment manual for us on top of putting together an educational program. And so when I started, we had just a handful of individuals that had designations in assessing. Everyone that I hired had 5 years or more of assessing that I brought on. And then we had staff that had been at the office that we retained, and we helped get them certified. So more than half of my team is certified in property valuations.
But prior to that, nobody was really certified? So how did they get the job? Just to say that, hey, we need somebody and you seem to fit the bill? So we've been going years prior to you coming on, because I did read this on you, was that you basically started this whole certification that you have for all the people that work for you. But prior to that, there was basically nothing, from what it sounds like. It was
correct. And it's not been, my advocacy and the light that I've shown on the assessment process hasn't been looked at with a lot of grace and appreciation from other elected officials.
But
You know,
this
my
is Chicago
colleagues.
politics.
It's
As soon as you start doing something good or semi decent, everybody's ready to cut your legs off.
and
That's
they
just
have
Chicago
been.
politics.
It has been the last several years has been a coordinated effort to attack my character. And attack, me as a woman, right? Like as women, we do face higher scrutiny. It could just be we don't like her, and it's not that she's qualified. The party just.
I've read a lot. I've been doing a lot of reading on you. I've been doing some reading on Kagi and stuff, and it does seem like you do have some people who have vendettas against you for some reason.
Yeah,
because on X it's been big, and I've gone on there and I'm like, hey, I was like, why aren't you picking on some other people in Cook County? I was like, we've got people burning flags that are aldermen. We've got a bank robber who is the vice mayor. I was like, where are you not?
I have no idea about that. But I do have, I have an ex-employee who was not happy that I let him go and has been harassing me to the point that, and sending out this information to the public that I've received death threats. Like, literally, all I do is settle your property tax appeals. And
I've read the comments. I know they get nasty.
It's not
I was shocked as to how. I mean, just like anything else, everybody, when you get behind that keyboard, you can say what you want and think that nothing's going to happen to you. But I was just like, holy crap! I'm like, okay, you know what? We're all human. We all make mistakes, whatever that mistake was. But some of the stuff that they're trying to get you on, like the ethics board thing or whatever, I'm like, okay, how bad was this or whatever the ethics board?
Can you imagine? I got in trouble for talking to the media about property.
Something about the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and my colleagues talk
confidential
about
or something. I'm just like, you know what? I was like, if that's what you're going to cry about, and this is what you're going to put a big stink about, and trust me, I get, if the ethics board is going to do something, then you know what? How about we're a sanctuary city, sanctuary state, not following federal law, and we're letting criminals on the street, and the ethics board's going to worry about that you disclose something about a tax, whatever that was, to the media.
I ran my first campaign on being transparent, and everyone that talks about properties, they have no idea, and they say, well, we'll be more transparent, and yet just talking about a property I got fined for. I am the first openly LGBTQ plus commissioner at the Board of Review, and I got fined for paying for myself and one of my employees to go to an LGBT conference. It's no different than going to a Latino conference or an African American conference, but I was called out for that, right? Like, it's these little nicks that they're trying to find loopholes and details and refusing to do things. Like in October of 23, my employee, who I hired a data scientist and a GIS specialist, two different individuals, to come on in March of 23, right after taking office. And I was able to do this because of my background and personal relationships with individuals. And my colleagues locked my employee out of the software system, not letting me fulfill my oath to office, like my statutory obligations.
So someone inside is trying to...
The general counsel was reaching out, and I have a whole history of emails that she was reaching out trying to get someone to say that there was a security risk. And it was like so apparent that she had no idea what a VPN was and the security that provides for individuals logging in outside of our system, like outside of the county. It was just, and then nothing has been done about that. Absolutely nothing. I have an employee who is a veteran. He served in the Gulf War, was a helicopter pilot. He helped us win an international award, and we got to receive that at a conference in Utah. And of course, I wanted him to come with because of it was his work, and he has a medical waiver to not fly, and so drive, right? You get the mileage or whatever the difference rate would be for the flight versus the mileage. Right. They refused to pay him. It took him almost a year to get compensation. And it has nothing to do with this individual. It was they were attacking my employees to attack me.
To attack you.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate. And this is why good people don't run for office.
So why stay in politics?
Right. I know. Maybe I'm glutton for punishment. I'm also, I grew up in Bridgeport. I grew up very poor. The oldest of five. We moved to Indiana because my dad lost his job, and we actually lived with my grandfather. So there were like 6 of us moving into my grandfather's house. And it was a big adjustment. And I kind of like moving to Indiana from Chicago really felt like an outsider. I went from being one of very few white people in my class to being, having very few colored people in our class. And it really showed me that if you just be quiet, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to speak up and you have to take on, the machine.
And it's big here in Chicago. I had Alderman Lopez on my second podcast that I did. And we were talking about politics. I'm like, why would you get into politics, especially Chicago politics? It is so cutthroat and backstabbing dirty.
Oh, it has been terrible. And it's sort of a little naive, like Pollyanna, in that I thought I could just come and do a good job and improve the office, and people would, I would include them into some of my initiatives and it would be fine.
Yeah.
Like we would just move on and do our jobs. And it really is worse than Mean Girls. Like I can't even...
Because I was talking with these guys earlier. I'm like, there's a part of me, like probably about that much. I'm just like, you know what shot do I have at running for mayor? I mean, it can't be any worse than what we already have.
You and 94 other people. You could run for Congress. Everyone else is running for Congress this year.
I know. It is just like, but you're right, though. And this is what I tell a lot of people. I was like, you know what? I've thought about it, very small portion, because I have thick skin, but I don't have thick enough skin that if I saw you out on the street, I wouldn't knock you out if you talked. Like went against my family or attacked my family or something.
Oh, they've attacked my daughter. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and that people have really just ruthlessly attacked her, and she's nothing to do with this. Absolutely
and that's
nothing
where
to do with
if
this.
you come after me, that I'll take it all day long to a certain point. But at the same point, you go after my family, who have nothing to do with anything other than I decided that I wanted to try to do something different and run for politics, being crazy, I would have a serious issue. And that's why I don't think I could run for politics, because I just don't.
It's hard.
I know how I am, and I've got a mouth.
It's hard.
And I will call you out on your shit.
I did. I called someone out last week, and I think it may have played a role in me not getting the endorsement from the party. He was spreading texts that my opponent was sending out that were not true about me, and I called him out for the misogyny of it, and the inappropriateness. I mean, we're adults. Validate the information you have. This is why we're stuck with the president that we have, is because people would rather attack individuals than think about the consequences and what that individual contributes to the work in the community. So I've never really been one to not say something. And it's been very difficult.
It has to be. I just can't. I mean, like I said, I've read a lot of stuff online, and I mean, it's for everything that I've read, you've done a lot of different things that have helped the process for people to be able to do things easier, especially when it comes to the appeals process.
We won a national award for it.
So explain what the process is a little bit to people maybe who don't absolutely know, or are too afraid to still do it, or they want to hire an attorney because they're like, it's too cumbersome. And do you still need to, I mean, because the last time when I tried doing it, when I had my condos 4 years ago, I wanted to do the condo, but I couldn't do it on my own condo. The whole building had to do it, and there was 4 of us.
Oh, no, you can do it on your own condo.
Well, see, back then when I tried doing it, they said, no, you can't do it individually. Your entire building has to do it. That's what I got sent a letter telling me that. I'm like, and the rest of the building didn't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, then what?
You're stuck.
Yeah, I'm stuck. I'm like, okay, I got to stay with what I'm doing.
That actually, I feel like that is a violation of your due process.
I thought so too, because I'm just like, hey, if I want to go ahead and try to fight it, regardless of what everybody else wants to do, I should be able to fight my own property, even though it's a condo.
So at this point, I have appeal outreaches. So we'll have one tonight in Norwood Park. So for District 2 right now, we have Rogers Park is open, Norwood Park and Evanston. They close for their appeal August 5th. Every other township in the county is open right now. It's called pre-filing. Mm-hmm. So you can go online, just put in your information, submit. You don't have to provide documentation. I said earlier that I had hired a data scientist, and we run models to compare your property to other properties. It's basically saying, is your property assessed the same way the assessor assessed other properties like yours? Mm. And if it isn't, then you get a reduction. We have a higher rate of reduction on pro se, so people that file an appeal on their own than with attorneys. I'm not quite sure why that is. It just actually shakes
Seems to
out
come
that
out
way.
that way.
Maybe more people file appeals than
So do you need to have like
you do not.
appraisals, or like you have to come up with the comps? I mean,
No,
that's what I had to do
as a
back
taxpayer,
then.
not anymore.
So when I tried doing it, yeah, I had to come up with the comps. I'm like, well, what the hell am I? I'm like, that. Why is that my job? I should be able to appeal what it is, and why am I having to find who has the same condo and then submit that to say, hey, why am I paying more than this condo? And that's the way it was. And then I've heard stories too where some guys were like, hey, my taxes got raised, but my neighbor has a bigger house than I do. Then the house next door to me has a bigger house than I do. And the one across the street has a bigger house than I do. And they all remodeled just like I did, but I got hit with the assessment. And then when they went to go to fight it, they're like, well, if you want your neighbors, to get the same as you basically have to write out your neighbors so that they have to pay the same taxes that you got raised
They
on.
call that squeal appeal. A squeal appeal.
I'm like,
Yeah, that's just not the way it should be. You elect me to represent you, and I empower my staff. I give them training and education and guidelines, and I empower them to make those decisions. And like I said, it's a mix of a science and art, and that your opinion plays a role in that. And you can put whatever weight you find important on that appeal. And so you don't need to hire an attorney unless you're a business. If you own commercial property, you have to hire an attorney.
oh, you have to. Okay.
Yeah, it's a county board of review policy. I don't agree with it. So if I own commercial property, I personally have to hire an attorney, and I'm much more qualified than I hold one of the highest designations in assessing across the country. There are only 3. I'm one of 4 people in Illinois that have this designation, and so the likelihood of the attorney
So
knowing more about valuation
yeah,
than I do
you know
is
more
little,
than I'm going to say. You probably know more than Kagi does.
my
for sure.
colleagues require that, and I'm only one of 3
Yeah.
individuals, and so they require you to have to hire an attorney. You have to hire an attorney. In the last 2.5 years, I've realized that I can only control so much, and not to put so much energy into things that I cannot change.
Control. Yeah, yeah, I know. That old adage.
Yes, right, and it's true, and there's a reason for that. So it's been a focus of mine to make sure that my staff is trained to help residential taxpayers, and that's what we've been doing.
That's been awesome, because I do have a friend of mine who she's a realtor, but she helps the Latin community a lot, the Hispanics more in the suburbs, to help them figure out how to do appeals, because
it's intimidating.
It's very intimidating, and especially, and I haven't looked on the website, so I don't know if it's in Spanish for some people or if everything's in English.
It should be. We should have multiple languages on there.
So she helps translate for them to help them do the appeals, and even she was telling me, was like prior to, and I haven't talked to her really much about appeals lately, but it wasn't cumbersome again, to where now she's got to try to translate it to people who were basically where I had to help them with their mortgage. And then now she's got to explain what the appeals process is. Like, what is an appeal? Like, why are my taxes going up? And why are my payments going up, basically?
Right.
And they don't understand, well, property taxes are going up. Well, I didn't do anything to the house. Why is it up?
And
Whatever.
So we had, a couple of years ago, there was the Pilsen neighborhood was hit very hard with an increase, and it was going through gentrification.
Big time.
And I felt that there was an issue there. And so I looked at and assessed it myself. And, it's not my role at the Board of Review, but I looked at it from the assessor lens. I put my assessor hat on. And the assessor had 3 neighborhoods. And so the neighborhood in assessing world these are the comparable properties. And so we're going to create this as a neighborhood. He had 3, and that was pretty broad for the area. And a lot of them were not homogenous. And so you're supposed to be comparing like property. But if you're moving in and you're fixing it up and flipping it, I'm sitting there with generations of owning this property, and I'm not fixing it up. And, it's not the same property. And
Right.
so I reevaluated it, and it should have actually been 5 different neighborhoods, and it would have taken people's assessments down significantly. I brought that to the assessor's attention, and they did nothing with it. It was very frustrating for me. And so if you don't appeal at the board, there's nothing I can do to help you. I tell every taxpayer they need to appeal, because I only have jurisdiction over appeals.
Right.
And so we, post the Pilsen issue, I started what I call the social economic study. And I'm looking at neighborhoods like Hermosa, Humboldt Park, that are now seeing gentrification, some Rogers Park areas. And we're reaching out, trying to target those areas and reaching out to those taxpayers and saying, you really need to appeal so that you're not being compared with properties outside.
So you basically dropped away from the tax assessor's point because you were just not getting backed by, and I'm assuming this was probably Preckwinkle and her minions that didn't help back you to get the nomination to go against Katie, or how'd that work?
There were several different factors. So I did a poll, and the poll showed me neck to neck with Fritz. You would have to. I'm a single mom, right? Yeah. I do okay,
right?
But I'm not independently wealthy, and I can't afford to put $2 million. And he's done that every race. And I would have had to raise $3 million. And it's also my daughter's senior year in high school. I had dropped her off at an internship, and I came back the next morning. I flew in, and I didn't get home that night because I went to work, and then I went to campaign stuff in the Southland. And, there's a lot of issues between Commissioner Larry Rogers and Fritz. And I found myself getting caught in the middle of their bickering.
Yeah.
And I got home that night, and I was like, am I going to spend the next 8 months of my daughter's senior year out at these places and not being available for her? And so I thought about it, and it was like, maybe timing isn't right for you right now, Sam. And so I stepped back from it. I decided that I was better serving.
Family's better.
Family.
At least now, especially, because she's going to go off to college, and when's the next time? Yeah.
And then what am I going to do? Empty nest. But I thought I have a 2-year term, and then in 4 years I could run for assessor and not be up on the ballot, so I wouldn't be risking my seat as well. And now I do have maybe 2 challengers this time around, but I've built a pretty large coalition of actual taxpayers. Like when we have these appeal outreaches, you go to Jefferson Park Township, there'll be 500 people, just regular taxpayers at one event.
Well, because everybody's dying with all the property tax raises, and everybody's and then now with this stupid $1 billion bill that we just got to, the teachers union, and that's going to get divided up against whatever everybody else is going to, however that's going to get divvied up between Chicago and businesses and everything else. That's a huge chunk of change that everybody's taxes is going to keep going up, and it is going to keep going up because now we're in a deficit, and next year's budget is going to be a shit show. And it's going to be, where are you going to get hit? Who's going to get hit? Hard. And then you got Johnson. I call him Johnson Lightfoot. He is lying. He lied on his campaign saying that he wasn't going to raise property taxes. And what was the first thing he tried to do? Raise property taxes. And he's going to have to do it again next year probably to try to make up for the deficit of where we're going into 26.
I honestly believe that Mayor Johnson had the best intentions. I think that when we look at elected officials, if they don't succeed, our communities don't succeed. And so we want them to succeed. Maybe you voted for them or not, but if they don't succeed, our community doesn't succeed. And I can't imagine, I have no desire to ever be mayor of what it would be like running, a city the size of Chicago, and all of the history that we have, right? Like the political, the social, the economic, the racial history that Chicago holds. And that cost that has come with it. And there has been a lot of kicking the can down the road. And unfortunately, it looks as though we are not leaving the next generation in a better position than we saw.
No, it's terrible. The parking meter was the kickoff.
I don't know if that was the kickoff.
Well,
but
it seems like that's where it kind of started just going.
It's really been difficult. And I think pensions are an issue, but people get upset. The average person doesn't understand that as a government employee, you're not paying into Social Security. You have to pay into the pension system instead.
Right.
And you have no choice. And so people that paid in, of course, they deserve to receive that money and what they
Right.
were promised, because, you make life decisions based on what your government entities are telling you. And it's just really difficult to try to bridge that gap, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And then, like you said, the pension is, I think, going to be one of the biggest, hardest things. And I've read some articles saying that in order to almost get out of where we're at right now, you have to, with the new hires, starting with the teachers union to the police department to the fire department and all city government employees, to go to a 401k instead of doing pensions any longer.
Yeah, I know there's a senator, Rob Markwick, who specializes in that, and he can talk about it till the cows come home. But it's not my area of
Yeah,
expertise.
more than anything,
I
it's
know about it.
conversation.
I
Yeah.
know probably enough to be annoyed,
Very much annoyed.
but not enough to find the answers in that problem. So I'll leave that to the experts, and I'll
Yeah.
stay in my lane and keep in the property tax world and just make sure that people aren't paying more than their fair share.
I mean, you're going to get your fair share of all the brunt of a lot of this stuff because the property taxes, I think, are just going to constantly keep going up, and the appeals is going to be a huge part. Hopefully, you get reelected again. That you're going to get that brunt of people saying, "Why are my property taxes going up? Now, what am I going to do?" And then it's all going to come on your staff to be like, "Why didn't my appeal win?" Or something to that effect of, which you probably hear now, like, "Why did I lose my appeal? I want to know why."
Yeah, there are only a few ways that we can settle an appeal, and if we can't, then our hands are absolutely tied.
Yeah. So, well, I appreciate you coming in. This was awesome. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
It's going to be tough. And I wish you the best because you deserve the best to be able to keep moving forward. I mean, with everything that you've done personally, from what I've seen, all the other stuff is just noise.
It is.
It's just noise. It's unfortunate. We all make mistakes, whatever those mistakes have been. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But, for some reason, everybody seems to think that all politicians have to be like this godlike. We're just people. We're all human. Whatever happens, happens. Yeah, we make some bad decisions, whatever that case is, but we can move on from that. It's not like you did anything terrible. A couple of things with I still don't understand the Chicago Bears thing. I mean, who gives a shit? I mean, it's like, seriously? I mean, it's at the end of the day, that's one of the things. And then I don't know whether other stuff that they were talking about with this ethics board. I think the ethics
They
board
literally wanted me to make the media file a FOIA to respond.
So you gave them the information prior to them doing it. Who cares?
It's so inappropriate. As an elected official, I should be able to speak about the functions of my office.
That's called transparency. I'm sorry.
It's called good government.
Oh, that too. That too. Yeah. It's just, again, I have no idea why you wanted to get into politics, especially in Cook County.
I'm glutton for punishments.
I'm telling you.
But it's important for people to apply their skills and help their community. And, like I said, this is the reason that good people don't run for office. And we have a lot of people that should be in elected positions that have chosen their sanity and to keep their hair from turning gray early over helping their community at large.
And it's unfortunate. It really is. Because there are a lot of good people out there, I think, that would want to join politics and get into politics to help serve their community, which is exactly what you should be doing, and not doing it for gains of power or whatever the heck, that goes on. But it's the backstabbing and all the people trying to cut your legs out, and God forbid you do something well. It's like, well, I got to try to one up, or I got to cut them out so I look better.
Yeah.
That's just the game of politics, especially here in Chicago. It's just another level. And I'm sure New York is probably the same way.
I don't know.
So
I was in Indiana, and I thought, being the only Democrat, it was terrible. But politics, I think, in general, is just a cutthroat. And people really just need to focus on being kinder.
That would be one way.
Right? We're
just
all
let people,
human.
just let people do their job and be kind and you know what? And try to do the best that you can in whatever position you are in, and be able to have open minds and be able to speak to people that are smarter than you and take their advice and be able to implement that. Hey, somebody is smarter than me and is trying to help me to say, hey, this isn't really the way you want to do it. Let's do it a different way, because your way isn't always the right way. I mean, that's what.
No, and I think as a leader, it's important for you to be open to that, because I know I make mistakes, not just like in my daily life, but at work, right? Like we choose something that, had we been presented with a different opinion, we may not have chosen that. And I empower my staff to tell me, give me all of the options. If you don't agree with the path that I'm, and my chief of staff comes in a lot and she's like, okay, so you said this, but this is what would happen. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know about that. Right. You're right. Okay, let's do this.
Right.
She's like, well, that was easy.
But that's the way it should be.
It is absolutely the way it should be. So I've gone on too long for you.
But, no. This has been great. No, I appreciate you coming here. I really do. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
In your campaign. I really do. Folks, I appreciate you guys joining us. Again, as you know, all facts, no fluff. If you like the podcast, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe. Appreciate you guys.